Hello. Hi, everyone in virtual world. It is I, Miss Cummins, your faithful reading and social studies teacher. Hope you're all doing well today. Happy Tuesday. Did I get it right? It is Tuesday, right? I love how every day I'm like, what day is it? So nice outside. So I hope you guys will get out in your backyards. If you have a swimming pool, go do a cannonball in there. It looks super, super nice. I wish I might have to change my jacuzzi into a mini swimming pool. I guess we could do that, right? Don't heat it up. Why not? Today, reminder that this afternoon I'll be meeting with my class for chapter 7. Is it 7? Social studies for the gold rush, which goes along perfect with our story. If you haven't done so yet, you want to go ahead and print out your chapter 7 social studies packet, which is on my Edleo page. So make sure you have that before we start, and that way you don't have to copy your answers twice. Otherwise, you have to do it on a separate sheet of paper and then transfer them over later. So that's a little friendly reminder. Also remember that both my Tuesday and Thursday afternoon sessions, we will be playing Would You Rather. So at some point during our social studies Zoom, before, after, maybe both, I'm going to throw out a couple Would You Rathers. This one caught my attention today. It says, would you rather sleep an entire night on a bed of peanut butter or on a bed of jelly? Ooh, peanut butter or jelly. Peanut butter, very sticky. Jelly, very gooey and sugary smelly. Quite honestly, they both sound horrible, but I think I'd go with peanut butter. Because I feel like peanut butter I could get like in a good sticky spot and then be cool. I feel like the jelly would be really sweet smelling and I wouldn't be able to fall asleep. And then if you went on your side, you'd have like jelly going up your nose. All right, so you can say to someone in your house, what would you do? A bed of peanut butter or a bed of jelly? And some of you will be like, neither. Nope, can't do that. Would you rather means you got to pick one, right? All right, so today we are picking up with chapter 9 of By the Great Hornspoon, and it's actually a super short chapter, so we're going to do chapters 9 and 10. So we left off that Praiseworthy and Jack met Courts Jackson, and he was freaking out because his wife that he was going to meet for the first time, they became pen pals, fell in love, he proposed marriage. She's coming on the train, and his hair is a hot mess, and there's no barbers in town because they've all gone to the gold mines. So he sees that Jack has a really nice haircut, asks if Praiseworthy will give him a haircut, and as payment, he said he would give him all of his hair and beard clippings, which they thought was really weird. But turns out he had tons of gold flakes in his hair from being at the mines, and they struck it rich. So once they took the hair in a wash pan and swished it around, there was gold dust at the bottom. So suddenly now they have the money for the boat ride that they need to take to get to Sacramento City. Once again, Praiseworthy saves the day like he always does. So our next chapter is called The Man in the Jippy Jappa Hat. Now, a Jippy Jappa hat is like a big, almost like a sombrero, not quite that tall, but it's kind of a big, wide, floppy hat. So like if you want to go deep undercover, like a lot of women when they go on vacation, they get that big, wide brim hat, not only just for shelter from the sun, but it's like, don't bother me, I'm sitting by the pool, take a nap, read a book. Nobody's going to talk to you in your big, wide brim hat. So it says the man in the Jippy Jappa hat. Just think like big, huge hat. Okay. All right, here we go. It was about a week before Praiseworthy and Jack reached the diggings. They had caught the 4:00 riverboat at the end of the long wharf. Dr. Buckbee came to see them off, but he was staying behind in San Francisco. I'm going to wait for Cut-Eye Higgins, he said. He's bound to turn up with my map. I'll meet every ship that comes in until I get my hands on that scoundrel. That night, in their stateroom, Jack polished his hornspoon. Praiseworthy had let him buy it on the wharf with a pinch of gold dust. Finally, Jack tucked it inside of his belt and looked at himself in the mirror. All he lacked was a red flannel shirt and a floppy hat. A beard was out of the question. Well, at least for the time being. He glanced at Praiseworthy. He wondered what his partner would look like with his whiskers grown out and a revolver in his belt. Praiseworthy was as tall as Courts Jackson and as straight as an awning post. There were even sun creases forming in the corners of his eyes. Yes, sir, Jack thought. Praiseworthy would make a fine-looking gent. Their adventure in barbering had paid expenses nicely. There was gold dust left over, and Praiseworthy had poured it into a little finger of his left white glove. So he's wearing gloves, but he put at the very end of it, he put their gold dust, so it's hidden in there. For safekeeping, and he had made a list of the gold camps the miners had banded about, and now he studied the names. Chilly Gulch, Grizzly Flats, Timbuktu, he muttered. They sound like dreadful places to take a growing boy. They sounded absolutely glorious to Jack. Don't worry about me, Praiseworthy. Well, I'm actually thinking of your Aunt Arabella. What would she think if you write from a place called Bedbug or Whiskey Flat or even worse, Hangtown? Angel's Camp, that she might approve of that one, but they say it's a fearful place. Let me see. There's Rough and Ready. There's You Bet. And then there's Humbug, not to mention Rawhide, Roaring Camp, and Cutthroat. Well, what will it be, Master Jack? One place sounds as bloodthirsty as the next. Hangtown, said Jack. Okay, then Hangtown it is, said Praiseworthy. The following morning, Jack saw Indians for the first time in his entire life. They came to the banks of the river to watch the crowded boat and listen to the ringing of its pilot house bell. Jack stared back in complete fascination. Wouldn't his sisters Constance and Sarah be frightened? But that night, when the flat-bottomed riverboat got stuck on a sandbar, Jack felt a little uneasy himself. What if the savages came aboard it while the passengers were sleeping and helped themselves to a few scalps? Stuff and nonsense, Praiseworthy smiled, shaving himself at the cabin mirror. The steward tells me they're digger Indians, quite tame. They dig for roots and acorns and are a menace to nothing but wasps and grasshoppers, which they actually consider a delicacy. With one sandbar and another, it was 2 days before Sacramento City actually came into view. A shore cannon went off, raising a cloud of dust to announce the arrival of the boat. Townspeople flocked to the river. Praiseworthy and Jack carried their picks and shovels, gold pans, and carpet bags right through the crowd. It was the end of June, and the valley shimmered with heat. Wooden awnings stretched over the storefronts like eye shades, and as they walked along, Jack kept gazing at the mountains, the great Sierra Nevadas. They stood dark blue and purple against the hot morning sky. That must be where the gold was, Jack thought, and fresh hope shot through him. They were almost there, weren't they? A stage was leaving for the mines at 2 o'clock, meaning a stage coach. But if you're cool, you call it a stage. Where are we? Stage was leaving at 2 o'clock. To raise their fare, the butler and the boy had no choice but to sell off a pick and shovel. Mining tools were in great demand, and prices were absolutely astonishing. The pick and shovel brought $100 each. After paying their stage fare, Praiseworthy poured the gold dust left over into the tips of all 5 fingers on his left glove. He had difficulty getting his hand in, but he made it. His left hand felt as heavy as an anvil. The dust was their grub stake, and he had no intention of losing it to some rascal along the way. We ought to carry a gun, Praiseworthy, like a 4-shooter. No, there's no time for that now, Master Jack. They were the last passengers to board the stagecoach. They had hardly taken their seats when the driver, a bandy-legged man in old buckskin, snapped his whip and the horses bolted, and they were off to the diggings. Jack was squeezed in beside Praiseworthy and a red-faced man wearing a string tie. He was quick to introduce himself as the Undertaker. Fletcher's the name, gentlemen. Jonas T. Fletcher of Hangtown. I don't mind telling you that business is brisk in my line of work up here in the diggings. Glad to meet you, yes, sir. Socially or professionally, as the case may be. Now, an undertaker is someone you hire to bury someone who is dead. In the seat opposite sat 2 Frenchmen in brand new jackboots and checkered shirts with the creases still in them. Between them and opposite Jack, so that their knees were almost touching, sat a man in a dusty linen suit and his hat pulled down over his face. He had been sleeping that way from the moment Praiseworthy and Jack had entered the coach. Don't see how a man can sleep on this bumpy road, Jonas T. Fletcher laughed. Maybe he's dead. Ain't that a fine-looking jippy-jappa hot hat he's got on? Must have bought that in Panama. I came across the plains myself, clear from Missouri. Jonas T. Fletcher droned on. The team of horses raised red clouds of dust, and Jack watched the passing sights as best as he could. They overtook ox-drawn wagons loaded with stores for the mines and strings of pack mules. The man in the fine straw jippy-jappa hat slept on. A large ruby ring glistened from his finger. With the jostling of the stage, his coat fell open and Jack could see the butt of a dueling pistol tucked right inside of his belt. And the butt of a pistol is the part that you hold on to it. It's like the end. It was almost an hour before he awoke. His hand rested on the pistol and he tipped the hat back off of his face. He looked straight into Jack's eyes with the faintest of smiles as if he hadn't been asleep at all. Jack very nearly jumped out of his seat. It was Mr. Cuda Higgins. Ooh, so this whole time, they've been trapped in the stagecoach with their arch enemy, Cut-Eye Higgins. And they're literally, in the stagecoaches, you sit on benches facing each other and your knees kind of knock against each other because it's super bumpy. All right, chapter 10, the rogue outrogued. And a rogue is a bad guy. And the rogue being outrogued mean there was a worse bad guy who tricked the first bad guy. Praiseworthy remained remarkably calm. He didn't so much as raise an eyebrow, but he did give Jack a faint poke in the ribs with his elbow, as if to say, "Easy, Master Jack, easy. Leave the scoundrel to me." Small world, isn't it? Cut-Eye Higgins grinned. His hand remained at rest in silent warning on the butt of his pistol. "I hadn't noticed until today," said Praiseworthy. "If I didn't know better, I'd think that you were still in Rio." The villain's scarred eye was set at a squint. "Rio was too hot for me, you might say, so I lit out for Panama. I crossed the isthmus by bongo boat and muleback, and a whole parade of folks is getting to the Pacific that way. And looks like I beat you to California at that. I dare say you had a good map to guide you, didn't you?" The man in the jippy jappa hat bared his yellow teeth in a laugh. "A map? A map? Why, what map is that?" Praiseworthy narrowed his glance. "I bring your regards from the good Dr. Buckby." "Well, now, ain't that neighborly of you?" The stage charged across the valley flats, and the Frenchmen shook handkerchiefs in front of their noses to keep the dust away. Jonas T. Fletcher kept shooting tobacco juice out the window as if the ground were on fire. Jack's hand fell to the hornspoon that was on his belt. He could almost imagine that it was a four-shooter. That would make Mr. Cut-Eye Higgins sit up and take notice of him. Why, he'd beg to hand over Dr. Buckby's gold map. The dueling pistol in his belt would be no match for a four-shooter. But Praiseworthy didn't seem in the least concerned about the lack of firearms. "Have you met Mr. Fletcher?" he said, tugging at his left glove. "He tells us he's an undertaker. A man in your line of work, sir, never knows when he'll need the services of a good undertaker." I didn't get the name," said the Missourian. "Higgins," Cut-Eye Higgins. Cut-Eye grinned. "Doc Higgins, dentist." "Well, now," smiled the undertaker, "the boys will be glad to have a tooth extractor up at camp." Praiseworthy winked at Jack. The impostor had apparently given up his judge title. A dentist, was he? Specializing in extracting gold teeth, no doubt. So back then they used to fill fillings not with silver, but with real gold. "And now, if you gentlemen will excuse me," said the butler, "I believe I'll catch a nap." Sleep, Jack thought. How could anyone sleep with Cut-Eye Higgins sitting right there? But before the stage had traveled another quarter of a mile, Praiseworthy was napping soundly, and Jack sat gazing at the villain, their knees almost touching, and the man in the jippy jappa hat gazed right back at him. By late afternoon, they had reached the brown foothills, and the stage pulled up to a relay station for a change of fresh horses. With the mountains rising at their shoulders, Praiseworthy and Jack stood at the well, refreshing themselves with dippers of cool water. The four-horse team was being replaced with a team of 6 for the hard climb that lied ahead. "Do you think he's got Dr. Buckby's map with him?" Jack whispered. "No doubt about it," said Praiseworthy. "I'll wager he doesn't take his hand off that dueling pistol, even when he sleeps." "We'll need a shotgun to get the map away from him. A four-shooter at least, don't you think, Praiseworthy?" "Lacking one and the other," said the butler. "We'll have to rely on our wits, Master Jack. I have no intention of allowing Dr. Buckby to be cheated of his dear map." Soon they were underway again. The narrow road climbed sharply. Oak trees gave way to shadow-darkened pines. The sun was setting across the valley as if to desert them, and the driver's whip cracked in the air like a rifle shot's. Inside the wooden coach, the passengers sat knee to knee as before and held on against the bumps and the ruts of the road. Finally, the stage rounded a bend, and the trail seemed to shoot up like a ladder. "Everybody out!" shouted the driver. "Push, gents, push!" So the stagecoach stuck. The horses can't do it anymore, so now everybody has to push. Cut-Eye Higgins didn't take his hand off his pistol, but for a moment he pushed with only one hand. Slowly, the stagecoach, piled high on top with luggage and supplies, climbed the road. The driver urged the team on with his whip. "Keep at it, gents. We're gaining." Jack put his shoulder to the coach like the others and dug his shoes in the dirt. Halfway up the hill, it seemed to him the driver must have 6 whips in his hands for all the noise that he was making. Suddenly a window shattered and then another, and just as suddenly Jack became aware that it wasn't only the crack of the whip that was in the air, it was gunshots. "Road agents!" the driver yelled. He set the brake and reached for his rifle. "It's a holdup!" Praiseworthy pushed Jack under the coach. Jonas T. Fletcher had beat him there. Through the spokes of the big wheels, Jack saw a dozen horsemen with red bandanas around their faces charge out of the pine trees. Cut-Eye Higgins drew his dueling pistol and fired, but he missed. He didn't have a chance to reload. The road agents had them surrounded. Their guns and rifles were bristling in the twilight. The leader, a big fellow with holes in his boots, called to the driver, "Throw down your rifle. The rest of you, reach for the sky, or I'll send you there pronto." Jack swallowed hard and came out in the open. Praiseworthy gave him a reassuring glance and didn't seem scared at all. They raised their hands, and Cut-Eye Higgins growled to himself, but his arms shot up just like the others. "Sorry to interrupt your little journey here," said the leader. "We'll only detain you boys for a moment. Boys, hop to it." Two of the outlaws climbed on top of the stage and threw down the trunks and boxes and carpet bags. Others broke them open to paw through the contents for the valuables. Meanwhile, another pair of road agents made quick work of the passengers. They pulled watches and chains off their vests and tugged buckskin pouches of gold dust from pockets and belts. Jack tried not to look up at Praiseworthy's white gloves. The outlaws would never think of looking there, or would they? "All right, gents," said one of the gang through the bandana across his mouth. "Now lower your hands one by one and let's have your rings." He started with the Frenchman and then came to Cut-Eye Higgins. He wore a gold ring set with a ruby, like a drop of blood. Stolen, no doubt, Jack thought. The rogue is being out-rogued, but it was actually a small comfort. "Why, I wore this ring since I was a lad," said Cut-Eye Higgins. "It doesn't come off." "Well, in that case," the outlaw laughed, "we'll just have to chop off your finger then." Cut-Eye Higgins quickly removed the ring in an instant, and the highwayman roared with laughter. "I don't have a ring," said Jack. "Well, I can see that, boy." The road agent moved on to Praiseworthy. "Well, look here, we got a regular gentleman with gloves on." "Not a gentleman," corrected Praiseworthy. "Merely just a butler." "What's that? Never did hear of a butler before." Jack's heart began to beat faster. Praiseworthy pulled off his right-hand glove. Their gold dust, their grub stake would soon be exposed if he took off the other glove. But Praiseworthy seemed unconcerned as could be. "How about the other hand?" growled the outlaw. "Oh, naturally," said Praiseworthy. He pulled the glove off each finger, carefully but casually, and held up his bare hand. The gold dust remained in the fingers of the glove. "No rings, as you can see." And the outlaw moved on. Praiseworthy gave Jack a wink without really winking and very calmly pulled the gloves back on again. But another big fellow was emptying Praiseworthy's carpet bag in the dirt. Shirts, cufflinks, hairbrush. "Ah, why, look here," the ruffian chuckled. "A picture. A regular beauty, ain't she, boys?" Jack recognized the tintype at once. It was his Aunt Arabella. He didn't know Praiseworthy had a picture of her along in his bag. When he glanced up, Praiseworthy had gone white with anger. "I'll thank you quite nicely to return that picture to my bag immediately," he warned, stamping each word out of cold steel. "Oh, you don't say. Well, I'd be proud to own a picture like this. I guess I'm just going to take this one along." The rest happened so fast that Jack missed half of it in the blink of an eye. Praiseworthy, in his fury, struck like a bolt of lightning. Grabbing the ruffian to his feet by the shirt front, he slammed his left gloved fist into the man's bandana-covered face. The outlaw hurled back as if he'd been struck with a stick of wood, and he just lay there, stunned. "Why, look at that," said the undertaker in awe. "You knocked that big fella 15 feet uphill." If the fellow outlaws had held their fire, it was only because they were too startled by the butler's awesome left jab. They were like trees growing from the ground they stood on, and then their leader seemed to grin behind his bandana. "I'd take my hat off to you," he said, "but it ain't fitting for a man in my line of work." That was something to see. "Boys, lift our fallen friend across the saddle, and we're going to get going." Jack glazed at Praiseworthy with fresh admiration. The butler had never let on that he was so handy with his fists. The truth of the matter was that Praiseworthy had been as surprised as everyone else to see the brute go flying. And then he remembered that he had the heavy gold dust packed in the fingertips of his glove. It was exactly as heavy as lead. With his fingers clenched around it, his fist had the kick of a mule. He picked up Aunt Arabella's picture, dusted it off. Seemed curious to Jack that he had brought it along. It made him feel strangely closer to Praiseworthy than ever before. "One more thing," said the gang leader. "All you gents, Take off your coats. Drop them in a pile. The guns came up again, and that left no room for argument. Jonas T. Fletcher peeled off his frock coat. Cut-Eye Higgins dropped his dusty white linen coat. Regretfully, Praiseworthy added his fine black coat to the pile. He would miss it. So remember when he lost his butler hat on the boat? So that was the peeling away of the butler. Now he's getting rid of his butler jacket. Now he's just a gold miner. Never met an immigrant yet, said the leader, who wouldn't have gold pieces sewn up in the lining of his coat. He won't need coats in this heat, gents, so we'll just take him along for you. An instant later, the highwaymen spurred their horses and carried away their booty of watches, rings, buckskin, gold pouches, and of course their coats. Praiseworthy, unaccustomed to mere shirt sleeves, stood in the dust like a leopard suddenly stripped of his spots. Wait till the boys hear about this, said the undertaker. 15 feet uphill. Praiseworthy moved past him to step in front of Cut-Eye Higgins. I'll thank you, sir, to hand over Dr. Buckbee's map immediately. The dispirited villain reached for his dueling pistol, and Jack stopped in his tracks. Was Praiseworthy trying to get himself killed? Don't bother to draw your gun, said the butler. I was careful to notice that you never reloaded it. The map, sir. Please give me the map. The other man stared at him out of his scarred eye and then began to chuckle. But to Jack, it sounded as much like a growl than a chuckle. You're a little late, said Cut-Eye Higgins. Late? The map was sewn up in the lining of my there coat they just took. All right, next chapter is called Jamocha Jack. My class, quick reminder, I'm seeing you guys today at 1, and I realized on the weekly agenda I forgot to put the Zoom ID and password, so I emailed it to your parents last night. So instead of doing it right before our session at 1 and being all stressed out and stressing out your parents, if you could, right after listening to this, ask your parents to pull up that email I sent last night, write down the Zoom session and password so you're ready to go. And just so you guys know, I've been using the exact same Zoom session passwords for Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday sessions, so they'll always be the same. So if you just actually write them down somewhere, then you don't have to worry about it. All right, guys, come in, see you at 1 o'clock. Nagdev, I will see everyone tomorrow morning, 11 o'clock for our next chapter. And then Nagdev, I'll see you at 1 o'clock on Thursday afternoon for social studies. Talk to you later. Bye.